love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up, it's time to look at the enemy.
Hi everybody, Ricky here from Behind the Bars TV. In this episode I'm going to be talking about life without parole, and the person I'll be talking about is Wayne Couzens, and he was sentenced in February 2022 to life without parole for the murder of Sarah Everard. Now before I get started, I just want to say a massive thanks to all my subscribers, and as I've mentioned previously, 80% of my viewers aren't subscribed to my channel. So if you can please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, help me channel grow, and it will only get better in the future. But I'm talking about Wayne Couzens in this episode. Of the 3rd of March 2021, 33-year-old Sarah Everard was stopped in the street by Wayne Couzens. And Wayne Couzens was a serving police officer. And when he stopped Sarah Everard in the street, he's produced his ID badge and identified himself as a police officer. And this is the reason why Sarah has gotten into his car. But just like any ordinary citizen would do if they get pulled over, or if they're walking down the street and someone pulls up in the car, gets out, shows the badge, you're automatically going to believe it and think it's true. So the poor lass is actually getting in the back of his car and he's went and kidnapped her. Got her handcuffed in the back of the car and he's drove her down to near Dover, and he's actually raped her and murdered her by strangulation. So Couzens was arrested 6 days later on the 9th of March on the suspicion of kidnapping Sarah, because at this point they hadn't realised she was dead. But on the 10th of March, the day after, Sarah's body was found in woodland areas. Was then arrested and charged for the kidnap, rape and murder of Sarah Everard. On the 28th of February 2021, Couzens booked a white Vauxhall car from a vehicle hire company in Dover. At 7 o'clock on the 3rd of March, he completed a 12-hour shift at the embassy in London before travelling to Kent to collect the car. He then drove back to London, where he was recorded as being in Earl's Court and on Battersea Bridge. After arriving in Clapham, he again drove to Earl's Court before returning to Clapham at 21:23 hours. At around 2100 hours, Everard left a friend's house on Leithwaite Road near Clapham Junction, west of Clapham Common. She walked along the A205 South Circular Road across the Common en route to her Brixton Hill home. She spoke to her boyfriend on her phone for about 15 minutes and agreed to meet him the next day. At 28, she was seen on doorbell camera footage on Poinders Road, and 4 minutes later on the dashcam of a passing police car. At 9:34, Couzens, who had parked the Vauxhall on the pavement outside Poinders Court, stopped Everard and showed her his police warrant card before handcuffing her. The trial judge later said that he had probably claimed that he was arresting her for having breached COVID guidelines. Couzens and Everard were twice captured by bus CCTV. The first instance at 9:35 showed them beside the hired Vauxhall, and the second at 9:38 showed the Vauxhall's number plate. Around this time, Couzens and Everard entered the car and Couzens drove to Kent. The route of the car was retrospectively tracked using CCTV and ANPR. By 9:43, Couzens and Everard were in Dover and had transferred to Couzens' personal Seat car. Between 9:53 and midnight on the 4th of March, Couzens' mobile phone connected to cell sites in the area of Sibbertswold, and it is believed that this is when he raped Everard. At 2:34 in the morning, Couzens purchased drinks from a Dover petrol station. It is believed that he strangled Everard using his police duty belt at some point before this. Couzens then drove to Hoards Wood near Ashford, where his car was captured on CCTV in the area, before driving back to Dover to switch back into his rental car before returning at 8:26 in the morning. After Couzens returned the car hire, he drove his personal car to Sandwich, Kent, disposing of Everard's mobile phone in one of the town's watercourses at 9:21. Later that day, Everard's boyfriend contacted the police after Everard did not meet him. In the days after the murder, Couzens told colleagues that he was suffering from stress and no longer wanted to carry a gun. On the 5th of March, shortly after 11 o'clock, Couzens bought and filled a petrol container at a service station in Whitfield. He then drove to Hoadswood, where his car was captured on CCTV at 12:37 and burned Everard's body inside a refrigerator. At 12:34, he bought 2 large builder bags from B&Q before returning to Hoadswood on the 7th of March, where he used one of the bags to dispose of Everard's remains in a pond. On the 8th of March, he reported himself ill from work, handing in his equipment, including his police belt and handcuffs. At 4:20 on the 10th of March, police searching Hoadswood found human remains in a large builder's bag, approximately 100 metres from a plot of land that Couzens owned. Police in Dover also searched the site of a former body repair garage previously owned by Couzens' family at the top of the White Cliffs. On the 12th of March, Everard's body was identified through dental records. 2 days later, police focused a search operation around the rope walk and sandwich and cordoned off approximately 1 square mile of the town. On the 16th of March, police continued to comb woodland in Kent and police divers in Sandwich searched underwater for Everard's mobile phone. Sarah's funeral took place on the 22nd of May at Heslington Church in Heslington near York. The results of a post-mortem held at William Harvey Hospital in Ashford were released on the 1st of June. The investigation concluded that she had died from compression of the neck. On the 9th of March, Couzens was arrested at his home in Deal on suspicion of kidnapping. Police arrived at his house at 5:45 and entered it at 6:50 to make the arrest. Around 40 minutes before he was arrested, Couzens tried to wipe the data from his mobile phone. When interviewed, he initially claimed not to recognise Everard after being shown a photograph of her. He then claimed to be having financial problems after paying for sex in Folkestone, and that a gang of Eastern Europeans had threatened him and his family, demanding he deliver another girl after underpaying a prostitute a few weeks before. A woman in her 30s was also arrested at the address on suspicion of assisting an offender, but subsequently released without charge. On the 10th of March, the day Everard's remains were discovered, Couzens was re-arrested on suspicion of murder. On the 11th of March, Couzens was hospitalised following a head injury sustained in custody. He was again briefly hospitalised the following day after similar injury. After the incident on the 11th of March, police said the injury was sustained while he was alone in his cell. Couzens was charged with Everard's kidnapping and murder on the 12th of March following authorisation from the Crown Prosecution Service. He appeared at Westminster Magistrates Court on the 13th of March and was remanded in custody before appearing at the Old Bailey via video link from Belmarsh Prison on March the 16th. On the 8th of June, Couzens pleaded guilty to kidnap and rape and admitted responsibility for Everard's death. Pending medical reports into his mental health at the time of Everard's deaths, Couzens did not enter a plea on the charge of murder. At a hearing on the 9th of July, Couzens pleaded guilty to murder. On video link from Belmarsh Prison, he kept his head down and was shaking slightly. It was reported that he had hired a car and bought a roll of strong self-adhesive tape days before the murder. He and the victim were complete strangers and were unknown to each other prior to her abduction. After the plea hearing, it was reported that Kent police had received a report in 2015 of a man in a car in Dover, naked from the waist down. It was believed there may have been enough information recorded in the Kent police system to have identified the man as Couzens, who was a serving police officer at the time. Speaking outside the Old Bailey, the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, Cressida Dick, said she felt sickened, angered and devastated by Couzens' crimes, adding, "They are dreadful and everyone in policing feels betrayed. Sarah was a fantastic, talented young woman with her whole life ahead of her, and that has been snatched away from her." The sentencing hearing before Lord Justice Fulford began at the Old Bailey on the 29th of September following medical and psychiatric reports. Couzens barrister Jim Sturman, QC, asked Fulford to consider imposing a life sentence with a determinate tariff which would allow Couzens to become eligible for release on licence when he was in his 80s. On the 30th of September, Couzens was sentenced to life imprisonment with a tariff of a whole life order, with Fulford justifying the severity of the punishment by saying that Couzens' use of his position as a police officer to detain Everard was the vital factor which, in my view, makes the seriousness of the case exceptionally high. In October 2021, it was reported that Couzens was applying for leave to appeal against his sentence. In July 2022, his appeal against his whole life sentence was rejected by the Court of Appeal. As of December 2021, Couzens was imprisoned at HMP Franklin in County Durham. In March 2022, Couzens was further charged with 4 counts of indecent exposure related to the alleged incidents in January and February 2021. On the 24th of May 2022, he pleaded not guilty via video link from Franklin Prison. In November 2022, 2 of Couzens' colleagues, PC Jonathan Cobbin and former PC Joe Burders, were jailed for multiple counts of sending grossly offensive messages on a public communications network. Cobbin and Borders were part of a WhatsApp group chat with Couzens and another police officer. So Couzens is now in Franklin Prison with the rest of the beasties, because there's quite a few of them in there now serving life without parole, and they'll all be on the same wings together. But Couzens is the first person to get life without parole for their first murder. Normally you've had to have committed a murder before or committed multiple murders, but because he's a police officer and he's used his ID to get Sarah into the car and kidnap her, this is why he's been given life without parole. But he's supposed to have been in a position of trust, and he's used his trust and breached it in the worst case possible by kidnapping a poor defenseless woman off the streets, raping her, then strangling her. So for me as well, he deserves to spend the rest of his life in prison. But I hope everyone is enjoying the content. Remember to like and subscribe. I'll be uploading more videos soon of life without parole, so keep watching, people. Take care.